is up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. We're, 2 weeks away from NFL Week 1? So I think it's high time. We've done our division predictions. We've gone division by division, AFC North, all the way down to the NFC West. It's time to do our full NFL playoff predictions, something that we haven't really gotten the chance to do yet, so that's today. And Theo finally has to make his judgment call on the Buffalo Bills. He's been saying all off season, they're a little overrated. They're not going to make the playoffs. And now it's.
I'll give you a hint. After looking into it more, a different AFC West or AFC East team has drawn a little bit more ire from me.
We've seen the TikTok, man.
Since our AFC East preview. Did you know the Sports Illustrated, I think it was Sports Illustrated, but the Finsider website wrote an article about me?
Did they really?
I did see that. Did they say good things?
No. They said good things about the Dolphins.
Okay.
But
I mean, there are some positives to say about the Dolphins. I would.
Oh, yeah. You know.
We'll get into it.
We will. Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing before we get in?
I'm good. I'm in my new apartment.
Hey.
I don't have too much in here, but I have been able to get a couch in, which happened yesterday. My birthday present to myself was a free couch from Facebook Marketplace. I was about to drive to go pick it up, and I'm like, I should probably measure the back of my car. And this couch is like 7 feet long, and then it's like 3 feet wide and 4 feet deep, something like that, or 4 feet tall. And I measured the back of my car, and I was like, maybe. could happen. So I had to run to Ace Hardware, and I got a bungee cord. It didn't fit in the back of my car quite, but with the bungee cord it did. I was able to just bungee cord my trunk shut and drove it back here.
Oh my God.
And I got back here, and I'm like, well, I can't leave it in my car in a big city because, you know, it's just a bad idea to leave your car like obviously open and unlocked with a bungee cord in a major town. So I didn't want to do that. So I was like, I've got to move this thing into my apartment. And I set off on the task of moving this 7 foot long couch into my apartment by myself, which was probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to do on my own. But I got it done. It took a lot of maneuvering. It took a lot of rotating it end over end through narrow hallways and around corners. Blood, sweat, and tears. But it's here in my apartment, and I'm sitting in it now.
I have to ask, because for those that don't know, Theo sent Matt and I a video tour of his apartment. It's not a very giant apartment. A 7 foot couch to me seems like a lot of couch for not a lot of apartment.
Wow. Are you calling me broke?
No, I'm not calling you broke. I'm just saying it.
Your apartment just isn't very giant, Theo.
I think I'll send a picture when it's over and everything will make sense. But
okay.
I'll tell you that getting in through the doorways was, it wasn't very big compared to the doorways that I was fitting it through, but it got in here, and it's going to be nice. It's going to be nice. If I showed you around right now, it would not look nice because my stuff is still kind of scattered. Yeah. Because I'm moving
I'm trusting the process.
A furnished place to an unfurnished place. So I got nothing. Man. So I still need but Facebook Marketplace is the best. I got this for free. I've got a desk that I'm trying to pick up at $5 for free. I got a big rug for a couple bucks. If you're moving into somewhere and you have not checked out Facebook Marketplace, especially if you're in a big city, I mean, they're giving it away. People are desperate to just give you things for free on Facebook Marketplace. Put that price maximum at 0. You'll be able to find some good stuff. You
could start flipping things, man. Go to garage sales and just start.
I could, but I don't want to. But anyway, that's I spent my birthday with this couch and trying to move it by myself. Well, that was my celebration.
Hey, we hope you had a great birthday, Theo. For those that don't know, Theo's birthday was the 22nd, which is the same as LaMelo Ball.
And Randall Cobb.
And Randall Cobb.
What a lineup.
And I'm 23 now. I'm the eldest boy of this podcast.
Yeah.
So naturally,
he's an old man.
The revenue split goes mostly to me because of this.
Right. Of course,
Yes.
naturally. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm sorry. I never have anything to report. I just don't live an interesting life, I'm afraid.
No, that's not. That's very...
That is true. It's clearly true by what he has to say at the beginning of these episodes. We don't need to reassure him.
It's very melancholy.
I'll try to do something interesting before next episode, and then Blaine will be like, so did you do anything interesting? And it'll still be no. So that's...
The secret life of Matt.
You just lie.
I'm in a routine, you know.
If there were real life superheroes, you would be a prime suspect for being a secret identity, Matt, because I don't know, you've just got the look about you.
That'd be kind of
like,
cool.
oh, I never have anything going on, but you don't go to work. You have a podcast. So if there were real superheroes flying around, like hiding their secret identity, I think that you would be like on everybody's watch list
that's
of like,
sweet. That's awesome.
Keep an eye on him.
Keep an eye.
He's just a little too unassuming.
Hey, our friend Zach lives with him now. I'm gonna start doing some check-ins. Be like, yo, Zach, like.
Well, there's no one flying around out there, so I don't think he is one. But if there was,
he's like Ant-Man. Right? Ant-Man doesn't fly. Under the radar superhero. Yeah. But
maybe.
You guys want to talk about some football?
No, actually.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what superhero would I be?
I think your superpower would just be like, I don't know if it would be super strength, but it would be like more than you'd expect.
Why wouldn't it be super strength, man?
I don't know. I just don't know if you'd be like throwing helicopters around or like lifting up a tank, but I could see your superpower being like, man, he shifted that car like a lot more than I thought he would be able to. Or like absolutely, like strength turned up to like 110% of like the human maximums. Not to the point where it's OP, but to the point where it's like, yeah, he is like pretty damn strong. And then you'd just be sentenced to a reality where you'd be helped. You'd be sentenced to just help people move.
I have helped a lot of people move recently. I hadn't thought about it.
Hey. He's sentenced to help Theo move his couch.
You could have. You
seem like your superpower would be helping me move this desk I'm about to go get. If you were.
It does seem like your superpower would be helping people move in, Matt. I'm sorry.
That's really okay. Good That's not so bad.
Oh, man. What superpower would Matt have? Brought to you by...
Yeah, we'll throw an ad on that. But anyway, yeah, enough about superpowers. Let's talk about the superpowers of the NFL.
Hey, great transition. Good job, Theo. This is why he gets the big bucks. If you want to start off in the AFC, I think we could start off with I think the plan is we're going to go seed by seed.
Okay.
Right, starting
1
with
through
7.
Starting.
Do you want to starting with 7?
Yeah, it was starting with 1.
Oh, okay. I mean, I guess we could start with 1 if that's what you want to do.
I
think the 1 seeds are the least exciting because it'll be teams everybody thinks will be in the playoffs. So by the time we get to 7 seed, everybody will be waiting to see what mid-tier team that we'll select. Okay. So I think we should start with the obvious 1 seeds and then end with the intrigue. So let's start with the 1 seeds.
All right. Matt, Theo, who are your 1 seeds in the AFC?
Kansas City.
I knew it.
Yeah, you know, and I know you'll have somebody else as the 1 seed. The Jaguars, maybe the Ravens. Like, I mean, this is the natural order of things. But, you know, I think they have Patrick Mahomes. I think they have the best player in football. I know they're without Chris Jones for a while, but that defense was still trending up towards the end of last season. I mean, it was not good to start off last year and got a lot better. I think a lot of that is going to carry over. I'm interested to see if their wide receivers have the upside that people are talking about. I don't think they can be any worse than they were last year. And I think their run game is still going to be strong behind that offensive line. So I think overall, I'm just not going to bet a bit against Patrick Mahomes. Now, it'll probably only be by a game. Somebody goes out. It could be shorter than that, of course. But coming off a Super Bowl win, best player in the world, arguably the best to ever do it, I'm going Kansas City. I'm sorry if that's boring, but that's my take.
Nothing wrong with that. I think that the Kansas City Chiefs will be one of the first 2 seeds. You're right, Matt. I do have someone different as my 1 seed, though.
Ravens or Jaguars?
Is it the Jets?
It's the Jaguars. It's the Jaguars.
No, I should have known it was the Jags. Yeah.
I just think the Jaguars are in such a good spot right now. I think that we're in line for the Trevor Lawrence breakout. They play in a division where they should sweep. I would say 6-0. Not that the Chiefs shouldn't sweep their division. I'm sure that they could easily go 6-0, but maybe 5-1. The Chargers have been pretty close to getting them every year, it seems like. But I'll say the Jaguars in that division win a bunch of games. I like the receiving core. I like Trevor Lawrence a lot. I like Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. I like Tyson Campbell. I think that he's going to really emerge as a true, not that he didn't last year, but he didn't really get a lot of respect for it. Now he's kind of on everybody's radar as being good, and I think this year he's going to repeat what he did last year and kind of really cement himself. That top corner spot in the league is kind of up for grabs. I think that Jair certainly has a case, but he got pretty publicly beat a couple times last year, so people don't quite view him in that regard, and maybe he's not, he's a little bit I don't know if too small. He's not quite the physically dominant guy you'd expect. Sauce Gardner and Surtain are currently up there at the top, but they're young guys. We'll see if they can repeat their performances. I tend to believe they can, but Tyson Campbell, I think, is someone who can come out there and has got all the tools. It's really just ball skills, losing, like tracking the thing in the air and making plays on it that he could really use. And then this year, I think the Jaguars will not be flying under the radar one bit. With all the hype they've gotten this offseason. So I really like him. I think that Trayvon Walker is someone who could, they've got a lot of young talent that could get better. And whether that be Devin Lloyd or Trayvon Walker or even Trevor Lawrence, I think it's all kind of growing in an easy division. And I think there's going to be a lot of wins on the board for them. Chris Jones indicated, and we'll talk about this, that he's open to holding out until about week 8 or, the long haul. And this defense, it really pulled itself together at the end. But sometimes with Kansas City, they get off to slow starts. And if Chris Jones is not there, that start could be very slow indeed. And I think by the time the playoffs roll around, they'll be the juggernaut they typically are. But I think the Jaguars right now, and if Chris Jones misses any time, is a bit more well-rounded.
So Blaiden, who do you have before we get?
I have Kansas City.
You have Kansas City. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have anything wrong with the Jaguars being the 1 seed. I think that's obviously going to be seen as a little bit of a hot take, but I don't see that, or I do see them taking a pretty big leap. I have them as my 2 seed. And what really does it for me is you look at a lot of these AFC teams. The Ravens, brutal schedule. Everybody in the NFC North, brutal schedule. AFC East, some of the hardest schedules in the entire league. The Jaguars, they play the AFC South. And then what NFC division do you think they drew?
Got to be the South or the North.
It's the NFC South. That is a very, very nice schedule. It's one of the easier ones in the entire AFC. To me, that matters a lot. I think people, and this is kind of how I built a lot of my list. I think people really underestimate how much having an easy schedule can matter. In college, obviously, that's like a really big deal. Like everybody looks at it a ton. In the NFL, everyone's like, well, they're all NFL teams. They're all competitive. Maybe it'll be a little bit easier for some teams or maybe their division is easy and a lot of other teams won't win games, but it balances out. And it obviously balances out a lot more. But a lot of the teams that won a bunch of games last year also had very easy schedules. A lot of the teams towards the top, or a lot of divisions that maybe got a bunch of wild cards in, had help in not just playing the toughest schedules ever. So I think the Jaguars are a perfectly reasonable pick. I'm picking the Kansas City Chiefs because I probably pick favorites a little bit too much, and I'm lame, and I'm not.
This is why your superpower is helping people move, Matt.
This is why I can't fly, but I do like the take. I think their passing offense is going to be ridiculous. I think Lawrence will take that leap. So it's not a bad take at all. I totally agree. Who do you guys
The
have as your
Jaguars,
two seed?
the Jaguars do get tested though. Like I think that we'll have a pretty good idea of what to expect from them going into the playoffs because they do play the Chiefs, they do play the Bills, they do play the Bengals in their kind of extra games that
And they
don't
play the
fit into
AFC
either.
North.
Yeah,
Nobody has
So,
it just easy the whole way through, absolutely, except for maybe one certain division, but we'll talk about that later.
and sometimes it happens. You never know what can happen in the season. Like the Eagles last year, it looks like maybe they're. I don't remember how their schedule looked at the beginning of the season, but obviously, quarterbacks get hurt. They don't, and quarterbacks underwhelm. They end up not playing any tough ones over the course of basically their entire season. So, yeah, sometimes it just works out that way after the fact. But yeah, the Jaguars have a pretty easy path, and I think they'll be the 1 seed because of it. I have the Chiefs as the 2 seed. I do think I have to believe at some point they work something out with Chris Jones. I mean, he's just one of those guys. There's no way they get something in return more valuable than Chris Jones because Chris Jones is just automatic pass rush for you, like an above average pass rush by himself. As long as you're calling these blitzes, if you're Spags, like he's going to be one-on-one, he's going to win one-on-ones, and that's all you really need. So what does a first round pick do for you? What does 2 first round picks do for you? Like Chris Jones helps you now in a Super Bowl window. Like if he wants to get paid more than Aaron Donald, I would pay him more than Aaron Donald. I get that Aaron Donald is kind of an outlier and the best defensive player ever or whatever, but you have to keep Chris Jones around to me. And I just have to believe at some point, even if it happens week 3, week 4, they have to bring him back before the trade deadline. And they absolutely should not trade him, in my opinion. So I like to think that he'll be back. And usually with things like this, it gets worked out. So I'm thinking that it will. Maybe it bleeds over a little bit into the regular season because it looks like they're nowhere close right now. It just hasn't seemed like there's been many positive developments. But yeah, he's an All-Pro. He's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Mahomes is an MVP candidate and probably win it again. 3 All-Pro candidates up in the interior of the offensive line. It's Nick Bolton is really, really good as well. The secondary, once Trent McDuffie came back, was really balling. So it's just a bit too much star power. Kelsey, I didn't even mention Andy Reid. I mean, it's all there. So yeah, I think that, but they're not the 1 seed every single year. It wasn't that long ago that the Titans were the 1 seed in that weird AFC. So it's like they're not unbeatable over the course of a season, and especially this year, the receiving core is, extremely young, and Chris Jones is holding out. So I think that it could be a potential Jaguars overtake this year. Although, will that matter in the playoffs? We'll get into that later.
I mean, it's we've talked before about how difficult the AFC is, but not just as far as like getting into the playoffs, but even the teams at the top, like getting that 1 seed is going to be tough. Like between, the Chiefs or the Jags or, maybe the Ravens or the Jets or all of these teams are going to be fighting for their lives to get that 1 seed. And I think we could, a lot of times we see teams rest their starters week 18. We probably won't see that as much this year, I could imagine. I have the Jets as the 2 seed. And I've gone around with this idea a little bit. And what really convinced me is I started thinking about when they got Dalvin Cook, I started thinking about the Vikings offense last year. And I was like, well, the Vikings offense was really good last year. And it's honestly very comparable to what the Jets have right now. And the Jets offense is probably better, right? I mean, if we're like, well, the Jets' weakness would be their offensive line, or maybe they don't have a ton of depth at receiver. I'm like, well, that's the same weakness the Vikings had. Plus, the Jets' run game is going to be better because they also have Breece Hall, and we know their defense is miles better than the Vikings. I don't see why this team can't be. I mean, we're talking about that's probably one of the five or 10 best defenses in the NFL. So I don't see why they can't go out and be, one of the top 2 or 3 seeds in this conference.
I think you're missing.
I would just say that their comparison is not the Vikings offense, but the Packers offense from a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's what it's comparable to.
Yeah, that works too. But I
think it's more of a discount version than that. The Vikings offense was not that good last year either, by the way. It was closer to average, but I digress.
I think you're maybe missing out on a lot of other details. The Vikings won 13 games, but if we go to every team and we say, oh, well, the Vikings won 13 games, and is this team better than the Vikings last year? You're probably going to answer like yes to a lot of them, because the Vikings won a lot of one-score games.
17-0. Yeah, their point differential was negative last year.
So I don't hate the Jets that high, but again, what it comes down to is there's a lot of big players in the NFC East. Those teams play some of the toughest schedules in the entire NFL. I mean, we're splitting hairs between what I think is going to be 4 really strong division winners. I just don't have the Jets that high. I think if there's going to be one team that wins 11 games and another one that wins 13, probably be the Jets winning 11.
I like the Jets, as I've talked about on this podcast. I think that defense is a really, really easy translation to be really good. I mean, last year they really collapsed towards the end, but for a decent chunk of the season, they were right in there in the playoff conversation. At one point, they had like overwhelmingly positive odds to make it into the playoffs, and then they just collapsed towards the end. So, if you have a more sustainable quarterback situation, it should be way better, because the defense, I do believe, defense is hard to project. It varies wildly year to year. But I do think the Jets are such a case where they were so good last year without forcing turnovers. The depth is so apparent on the defensive line. Sauce Gardner is so undeniable as a superstar. Like, there have been runs of good defenses year after year after year if the defenses are special. And I do think that this defense is special enough that you can project that from them. And then the offense, should be pretty good and is comparable to the Packers, and they've tried to rebuild that. And I think it's going to be a discount version, but I still think it's going to be pretty good. The news that Randall Cobb is getting like a lot of looks at number one, like not at number one, but like he's getting worked into the offense more and more and more. It does concern me a little bit. I do think the depth at wide receiver with Corey Davis retiring gets pretty bleak pretty fast if anything were to happen to Garrett Wilson, or if Garrett Wilson were to face a ton of defensive attention. What would the other answers be, especially early in the season as Breece Hall is working his way back to health? So the offense does concern me a little bit with everything I've seen from Rodgers these last couple of years, or not even these last couple of years, because there's been MVPs in there, but last year, really. And he's already been banged up 3 times in training camp. He's missed practice. Like, not that I think that he's going to suffer like a season-ending injury or anything, but as a Packers fan, I always see he gets up, he shakes his hand, he gets up, he plays on a hurt ankle. Like, there's just a lot of that with Rodgers these days because he's old. So I think the offense could prevent them from being quite the 2 seed over a team like Cincinnati or the Jaguars, but they certainly have a lot of potential based on what we saw last year if their defense can repeat that performance. So I've hyped them up all offseason. I still like them. I've cooled on them a little bit in these last couple days, but I don't think that's a terrible take. Jets at number 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I have the Jags at 3. But Matt, who do you have it? Do you have the Jags at 2 or?
I have the Jaguars at 2, and then I have the Ravens at 3.
Okay,
they're already starting to get banged up, man. I know. And the Bengals are so good too. It's like maybe it would just be easy to pick the Bengals, but it's going to be decided by a game probably played between them and the tiebreaker. So I don't want this to come off as any sort of Bengals slander. I just really believe in the Ravens. Yeah. I think Bateman's a good player when he plays. I think Odell's a good player when he plays. We'll see. I think Zay Flowers is going to be good. Off rip.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw my videos of him just in that first drive versus Washington. He's moving at a different speed than everybody.
He's got it, man. He does. He just has. The it factor is just there. That's all I'm saying.
He looked like Tyreek Hill. It was like 4 plays, but I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, he's and that's. There is something to just watching a guy and being like, oh my god. I remember the first time I saw him. Exactly where I was like, oh, that guy is going to be in the NFL. And then I later figured out who Zay Flowers was. I think he's very legit. I think Monken is a great OC. I think if you can even get, if Flowers can step up and if one of Bateman or Odell, it's going to be the best receivers Lamar's ever had. I totally believe in Lamar. I totally believe in that offense. I think if the cornerbacks can get healthy, which is going to be a struggle at the beginning of the year, I think they're just going to be a really nice unit. They were so good when they got Roquan last year. That defense should be fantastic. So everything is coming together for them, but I am thinking them a little bit because I think they have maybe slightly more injury concerns than an average NFL team. Lamar has been banged up. The cornerbacks are already banged up. I love J.K. Dobbins, but
Bateman.
Odell. It's like, dude. But and I know if I was playing the odds, I probably should go to the Bengals. But I really do believe eventually it's going to work out for the Ravens. I have to believe it. I just have to. So I'm so high on that team healthy. But the Bengals will be right there. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they're separated by a game again. And obviously, you need Lamar to play every single game. They're cooked without Lamar. They need him.
It's the thing with the Ravens. It's like when Lamar plays, they're like, I mean, who has a better record?
He wins what, like 80% of his
right,
starts?
Who has
He's
a better
ridiculous,
record
man.
as a starter than Lamar Jackson? Like, I know we say quarterback wins aren't a quarterback stat. Lamar Jackson just wins more than everyone else. And there's no explaining it other than he just puts defenses in a bind that no one else can.
He's just. I really hope he goes off here with Monken, and I like Isaiah Likely too. Like they do have the most weapons they've ever had with Lamar, and I think they've got a better offensive coordinator than he's ever had, and I think their defense is just as good as it's ever been. So I have the Ravens at 3, largely because of injury concern, and their schedule is not easy, but it's not like, I don't think it's top 10 in terms of strength of schedule, and obviously these things play out differently.
Yeah.
So that's
here,
what
can I run an idea by you guys? Hear me out here. I think
Are you going to say the Browns?
No. I love the Browns.
It's usually a pretty good guess.
They're not winning the AFC North, I don't think. So Jonathan Taylor has been free to seek a trade, and we'll talk about more of that later.
Oh.
I know we love J.K. Dobbins. Should the Ravens reach out?
I think if the Ravens don't want to pay Dobbins, I know Taylor is better probably, but there he is.
Probably.
But he's more proven. I really believe in Dobbins, but
so do I.
I just don't think that's where they want to spend their money. They're a team that's already, paying the quarterback, and it's very tough to pay the quarterback and then go pay big money for a running back and give up picks for him. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
I have the Bengals as the 3 seed just because of the health of the Ravens. But I do think the Ravens are tier A Super Bowl contenders with the Eagles, with the 49ers, with the Chiefs, with the Bengals. The problem is there's 2 of these teams in the same division.
Right,
it's like the Bengals I trust, even though Burrow is already a little banged up, I do think they are a bit more durable. I mean, the Ravens are an all-star team of injury-prone players, and we've talked about it before. Like, if you're an injury-prone team, don't be surprised when your team is injured in December. It's
right.
The 49ers have built teams based out of made out of glass in the past, and they've been devastated by injuries. And they're always like, why are we always hurt? And it's like you bring in Christian McCaffrey.
Right. It's just like, dude. Yeah.
So, but I think the Bengals are in that 49ers mold where it's like there's just stars all over the place. When I think I've told the story on the podcast before, or just explain this. It's like when I was at the Super Bowl, you'll go to podium, and it's just like all pro. And it's like, what teams fit that mold in the NFL? The Ravens do. I can totally imagine being in that environment. And there's Lamar Jackson, and there's Ronnie Stanley, and there's Odell Beckham, and there's J.K. Dobbins, and there's Marlon Humphrey, and there's Kyle Hamilton, and there's Roquan Smith, and there's, Marcus Williams. Like, they've just got a lot of talented people. And J.K. Dobbins led the league in yards per attempt, I believe, after coming back from injury. People get concerned about him. He's averaging 6 yards per attempt in his career so far. He's back at practice. Like, he was fantastic last year, and he's even farther removed from that injury now. So it's like people are concerned. I know it looked like he ran with a little bit of a hitch in his step last year. I know that didn't matter. He was still picking up 6 yards every time he touched the football. Right. I think that he's fantastic. Zay Flowers looks amazing, and he's the only one out there playing in the preseason. I didn't see Bateman or Odell, and I think that Monken is a wide receiver expert. Like, that's what he came into the league being. And, he coached Mike Williams and Chris Godwin down in Tampa, and I think that he deserves a lot of credit for those two being what they are. And, I think you give that receiving core with Andrews and Likely, and even it's like, where do you even put Pat Ricard? Because he can be a matchup nightmare too. So it's a really, really high ceiling unit, but it's also kind of a high floor unit or low floor unit because, of all the injuries. So I've got the Bengals. We all know what the Bengals are. They can get in shotgun. They can throw it 70% of the time, and they can be the most efficient team in the league doing that. And they've got Lou Almiromo, who is a fantastic defensive coordinator, plays Mahomes better than anybody. and, has delivered top 10 units over these past couple of years. They're getting Chidobe Awuzie back. Hopefully they were able to do a really good job bringing in both their linebackers, Pratt and Logan Thomas. I think the safety duo, like I'm watching Dax Hill, right? That's from Michigan,
Yeah.
Dax Hill.
Yep, Dax.
Okay, I knew it was Dax, and I was like, it's Hill, right? I think they're going to be able to just fit those guys in with the way they've been playing in preseason. So I just think they're a safer bet, like through the air. That's really like the most important thing, and there's no one really better at it than Burrow and Chase and Higgins. I think that their offensive line was really pretty good towards the back half of last season. They weren't taking like 9 sacks a game. They were actually near the bottom of the league in sacks taken per game. Burrow, I think, hit another gear where he was able to get the ball out quick, exploit not only over the top, but really lower his average depth of target and still be just as efficient, take less sacks. And I think it's just a very well-rounded team, and without too many, like, I don't know. We'll see. Burrow's been banged up, and I guess
that's a team I could see getting off to a
but
slow start with the new pieces.
the Ravens,
in the
it's just almost to a comical degree, is like how many of these people like frequently deal with nagging injuries. So I've got the Bengals at number 3 and really they could be the number 1 seed too. Like I think that
100%.
a lot of the superpowers of the league are in the AFC, and the Bengals are one of them.
Yeah, I still have the Bengals winning the North. I have them at 4 because I had the Jags at 3, and then I have the Ravens immediately after them because I do agree it's like it is that close, and I could see like the Bengals and Ravens could both have 12 wins. Like I could see that being a very real possibility. It's just that tight. But I agree with you, Theo, that the Bengals probably have more reliability, especially later into the year. So
that brings us to our 4 seeds, which for me will be the Jets. For Blaiden, it'll be...
For me, it's also the Jets.
And then for Blaiden, it's...
The Bengals.
The Bengals. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's our division winners.
Division winners. Yeah.
Right. And then we get into the wild card. Now, my first wild card, and I'm assuming your guys' first wild card, you guys have Ravens because you have the Bengals winning the AFC North.
Yep, I've still got the Ravens in the wild card spot. I think, they've got such a high ceiling.
Yeah, like we said, and I've got the Bengals.
Okay.
And that brings us to the 6th seed. Who do you guys have?
I have LA. I think Herbert last year being able to drag the team to the playoffs despite all the injuries, Slater missing the entire season, Keenan and Mike Williams missing like a third of it, throwing to absolute nobodies. Bosa missing almost the entire year, JC Jackson missing the entire year. That it was a lot to deal with. It was a lot to overcome, and for them to still win 10 games. To me, this year, the injury luck, I know the Chargers never seem to get the luck, but it's like, I think that they won't be that hurt this year, and they're returning someone who could potentially be the best left tackle in the league, someone who could potentially be an all-pro edge rusher. I like the Chargers. I do. I don't think Kellen Moore is a perfect OC, but I do think that he'll be an improvement over Michael Lombardi. I know that they led the league in failed completions last year. The Chargers did, which means just passes that get caught, but they don't pick up enough yardage. They're like 5 yards on 3rd and 8. It doesn't really help you that much. So just all of that short of the sticks, Herbert being at the lowest point in the league in average depth of target. I think that is all going away this year. And I think some of it is still going to be there because some of it is, I shouldn't say it's all going away. I think there's going to be more down the field shots. I think that Herbert's going to have a little bit less of a leash. I think that the personnel does kind of dictate you play that way. I mean, if you have Keenan Allen, you're going to throw it underneath a lot. If you have Austin Eckler, you're going to throw it underneath a lot. Like that's just the way the team is built. So there's still going to be some of that. It's not going to be just all of a sudden Todd Monken's Buccaneers from a few years ago where they're calling 4 verticals every play and letting Ryan Fitzpatrick air it out or Jameis air it out. But I think that there will be enough of it there. I think so much went wrong last year for them to still make the playoffs, to be the 6th seed this year. I don't think that's too tough of an ask.
Blaiden,
I have the Bills.
I also have the Bills, and I have them at 6, but I feel like that's too low. I still very much believe in them.
Yeah, it's just, it's just a tough AFC.
It's
Someone
a tough
has
AFC.
to
They've
be
got a tough
6.
schedule.
Yeah, but I will say, like, the Bills, and I could see a world where, like, when I was making this, I'm like, okay, I can see how you could get to a point where maybe they don't make the playoffs here.
I don't.
But, like, I'm just like, I understand how you could somehow come to that conclusion.
I get it. I mean, but I think a lot of what it comes down to is people are just getting low on the Bills because they might not be like a 1A contender. Like, they made their moves and it didn't work last year, and it just didn't work because it just didn't work.
Right.
And that's valid. But at the end of the day, everyone's like, oh, Josh Allen has to do everything. Okay. Well, he does.
Right.
He is that good.
Yeah.
Josh Allen is a superhero. Right.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't think that their offensive additions were bad. Osiris Torrance and Kincaid, you could do a lot worse than that. You could. And I think both those guys are serious improvements. I don't think their offense overall is nearly as bad either as people want to make it out to be. And I think their defense, you're pretty much just saying, well, everyone's going to regress. And it's like, maybe there will be some regression, but they had big injury problems at a lot of the positions we're predicting regression at, and they still had a great defense last year.
Yeah.
So then maybe they need Allen to go be a hero, but he is. I totally believe in him.
Yeah.
I have him as a 6th seed, and if they won 13 games, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm very high on them.
They won 13 games last year. And like you said, Matt, we're talking about, oh, well, Allen has to do everything. Okay, they had the second best offense by EPA last year. Oh, the defense was injured last year, and it could the defense was injured last year, and they were 7th in defensive EPA. They're getting these guys back. Even if they regress a little bit, at least they're back. Like, a slightly regressed Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde is better than no Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde in my book. So I would take that defense all day to still be really, really good.
I agree.
I've come around on the Bills a little bit and focused my attention more on the Dolphins being the real underwhelming team. And that started, Matt, with your explanation from the AFC East episode. Really was like, I was finding it kind of tough to justify. And Josh Allen, I mean, he's one of those 1A elite guys in the league, MVP candidate, probably should have one under his belt, honestly, with everything he's done, being like their leading rusher and creating out of structure. Like, a lot of their play calls is just like, go do something crazy, Josh Allen, and he leads them to the top of the league in offensive efficiency. Like, really, like, I'm not really mad at Mahomes winning it or whoever winning it, but like, Josh Allen has been right there in those conversations. And how often do those guys miss the playoffs? Like, Brady never did. Rodgers in his prime, like, almost never did, unless he broke his collarbone or something. And even then, he was able to come back and do it. Like, it just doesn't happen often that you see elite quarterbacks sitting at home come playoff time, unless their defense is like 32nd in the league, like Drew Brees when he was going 7-9 those years.
Oh my God.
When it was just this atrocious defense. And I think the Bills are aging. I think that their best years are kind of behind them. Their best windows for winning the Super Bowl are kind of behind them. But to miss the playoffs entirely when you've got a guy like Allen, you would need a real sabotage job from the rest of the team. And I don't love Gabe Davis. I don't love the offensive line. I think the defense, their best years are probably behind them. I'm a little bit worried about Sean McDermott being the defensive coordinator and the head coach. I mean, if I was building a team, I'd want as many people in the building as possible, helping each other out and making sure no one is spread too thin. That's 2 huge jobs to not have a defensive coordinator and to be the head coach and the DC. And it's like, is the attention to detail going to be that? Like, there's a reason why no one else does that. Like, there's a reason why that's not the norm. But does Belichick have a defensive coordinator? I don't think so. But Belichick is Belichick. Yeah. Maybe Sean McDermott can be that good, and maybe it won't matter at all, and maybe no one will notice, and it'll be all good. I think they'll be a little bit underwhelming. I think they do have problems, but I think that they do have one of those guys in Josh Allen. Since the season has ended, I'm back on the Josh Allen as QB2 after Mahomes train, and I think that he can carry him to the playoffs, and that's my official stance on the Bills. Although I think the AFC East has a chance to be a bit like the NFC West last year, where everybody going into the NFC West is like, oh my God, like, every team here is stacked. It's going to be the Chiefs winning it, but the Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders will all be in the playoffs as well, and it'll be a full playoff sweep for the. But then Hackett and Wilson wasn't a good match, and The Raiders were just kind of a disaster. I could kind of see that. I've laid out how I feel about the Dolphins. I could kind of see that happening with the Jets. I don't know if I anticipate it. I could kind of see it happening with the Bills as well. Like just maybe a little bit too thin at the top, a little bit too old. Like things start to go wrong in a worst case scenario. Like I think the division will be very good, but I also could see like worst case scenarios being a little bit closer than some people like to imagine. And I think like from top to bottom, I'm a little bit more comfortable with saying the best division in the league is the AFC North with the Ravens, Bengals, Steelers, and Browns, because
I think I might agree.
Because the Steelers and Bengals just seem to be super, super reliable to me. The Ravens have maybe a higher ceiling than everybody in the AFC East. And then the Browns also are stacked. So I think that that's the best division. I could see this one being a little underwhelming, but I've still got two teams.
So I've heard you say bad things about the Bills and about the Dolphins, and you even said you have some questions about the Jets. But it sounds like you think the Patriots are the best team in the AFC East.
Honestly considered putting the Patriots in my playoffs because they're my
8th seed. So
I do think that they've got the least amount of like weirdness surrounding them. Like, I don't know. Sometimes bad vibes in the offseason carry over to the regular season.
And my 9th seed, not my 8th seed.
And the Patriots were a team that were like that last year, where it was like in the offseason, everything was kind of going wrong. And then it hit the regular season. It was just bad. They just didn't have it. And I don't know. There's just like there's just no questions, I think, anymore. Like Bill O'Brien is going to be more competent than Matt Patricia. We know the defense is going to be good. Like at this point, if you think Belichick is just going to coach some average unit, it's like, I just don't know if I'm going to bet on that. I think that Mac Jones with Bill O'Brien could get closer to 2021 levels. Like, I really think they're going to be really solid. And if I think that these other top contenders in that division could be a bit underwhelming. So I was tempted to put the Patriots in there, but again, like Josh Allen, if you have one of those guys, like winning is not a quarterback stat, but quarterback impacts winning more than any of the other positions. Like if you have a good one, you've always got a chance on every single passing down. And sometimes they throw it and the receiver drops it and it's just fucked. and it's not their fault. You can't catch it for them, or you can't. And sometimes there's a one-on-one, their guard versus a tackle, and the guard gets annihilated and they get sacked, and then it's 3rd and long, and then they can't convert. Like everyone needs to play a part. It's not wins are a quarterback stat. Like it is possible for supporting casts to be bad and quarterbacks to get let down. But at the same time, they are absolutely the most valuable position on the field by far. And when you've got a guy like Josh Allen versus a guy like Mac Jones, the gap between or even if there is a gap between the rest of the Patriots roster and the Bills roster, or a gap in their coaching, perhaps. Yeah. Like, I don't think that's enough to overcome. It wouldn't surprise me. I think some people would be shocked to see the Patriots finish above the Bills. It would not shock me, but I'm not going to sit here and say it'll happen. I just don't know if that's a winning bet.
Yeah. So I imagine you have the Bills then at 7.
I do have the Bills as my 7th seed.
Okay. So then, Matt, you know who my 7 is. Do I know who
I
your
have some
7
idea
is?
of who it is.
It's the Browns, and that's a valid 7. That's an absolutely valid. Like, they could be really, really good. They're stacked.
7s.
There are a lot of valid 7s. I think the Browns had, I've said it before, I think they had the best offseason of any team in the league, filling more holes than anyone on their defensive line. With Dalvin Tomlinson, they got Siaki in the draft, who I think we all like a lot. They got Okoronkwo, they got Za'Darius. And then they added Elijah Moore on offense, and they got
Shelby Harris.
Yeah, Shelby Harris. Yeah, I forgot they just got Shelby Harris. Can't believe that happened. Hey, all I'm saying, Andrew Berry, call the Chiefs about Chris Jones. Then we're we're cooking.
What type of money?
We have the most cap space in the NFL right now.
That's fake
money, man.
There's no way.
We do. Look up cap space going into this year. The Browns have the most.
Have they paid Myles Garrett?
I don't know.
The money is coming. The salary cap is real.
The money's coming.
I think
the bill
Chris
will
Jones,
come due. But
I would doubt the Chiefs would also just trade Jones to the Browns and then have to deal with that probably in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's not like we have first round picks to give up anyway. So
That's also true.
yeah.
I don't hate the Browns as a pick. I mean, if you believe in the defensive additions, you believe in the defensive additions.
Yeah.
If you think Watson's going to look more like he did for the Texans, that's what you believe then. I mean,
that is my biggest concern and like why I don't have them higher is like there is a world where Watson is just like not that dude anymore. But I think even if he's not, I think the floor is like Jacoby Brissett with more escapability. And I think that would still be an improvement on the offense.
I'm sorry. What are the Browns cooking, dude? Because they are first in the league in cap space now.
I know.
You know where they are in 2024? Guess where they are in 2024?
Dead last.
Dead last.
Well, okay, that's because they restructured Watson's contract so that it's digestible now, but for the next 3 years, it's a $64 million cap hit, which obviously no team in the league could handle that. So what I project them to do is they're going to extend him either at the end of this season or at some point in the near future. They're going to extend him like 3 years. And they're going to restructure him again to spread out that cap even further.
He better play well then if they're going to extend
exactly
him.
Right. No,
but they are stacked. I think I've talked about how much I like. Schwartz is I don't know about his coverage. I know Eagles fans will say like he plays way too much off coverage. Not putting a roof on everything, giving people free third down conversions on like short yardage situations. That could all be true. I just know that they're going to stack up sacks this year.
Yeah.
Like that's all I'm going to say. And yeah. And if you believe in Watson, and I thought on their preseason drive, I don't know if the starters didn't play outside of that drive against Washington. I watched.
They didn't have Amari out there and they didn't have Batonio out there. But they had.
But Watson was out there and Mora was out there, and they drove right down the field on a Washington team that has a very good defense and was playing most of their ones. So on that one drive, I know they didn't score because on the goal line they didn't have Chubb and they were trying to do some bullshit.
Right.
And
That's
it didn't work.
Yeah, Chubb wasn't out there.
But it did look all right for that one drive. So who knows? Maybe it'll translate. Maybe it'll translate. I personally think Watson's going to get off to kind of a disappointing start.
I could see that. Right, that would be the thing that would like really be a disaster for this team. I think the ceiling is really high, and I think even in the playoffs, because their defense I think can be so good because of how much pressure they're going to create. I think they're going to be a problem for a lot of teams. Right, you can get pressure. I mean, they're getting pressure without Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
Right, in the preseason, wait till they get Garrett out there, and you can do rotations where it's Garrett and Dalvin and Za'Darius and Okoronkwo. Like you can do so much. It's going to be so hard to stop. So I think they're a really dangerous team. But you're right, Watson. Like as cliche as it is that the quarterback matters, Watson is going to be the deciding factor for how far this team goes.
Yeah, I mean, if Watson's good, they could win the Super Bowl. Like, I don't think that's too crazy to say, but I just don't know if Watson's going to come out firing after they averaged 13, maybe less than 13. It was less than 2 touchdowns a game when he came back last year. And it's not like, and it's like, well, he's had the offseason now, which is true, but he hasn't played in any games really besides the one, preseason game. And that's a very different speed than the regular season. So to project him to just hit the ground running, no problem. Like, I just can't do that. And in this division, I just don't know it. Like, if they have to make up ground, I don't know if any of the other teams are giving them breathing room to do that. And their schedule just has like the Steelers and the 49ers and the Titans and a bunch of teams. Like when we did our top 10 defenses episodes, we mentioned it's like all of that
the Browns
in the first half when Watson is getting back. So that's my concern with Cleveland. But if Watson just comes back and is lighting it up, like, yeah, I'll look really dumb really fast. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
Matt, who do you have at 7?
I have the Browns as well.
Let's go.
Okay.
So Matt and I both have the Chargers out.
Here's the thing. Their schedule is actually not that hard. Because
after the Niners game.
After the Niners game, it's really not that bad. The NFC West, there are worse polls than that. And one of the key things is that they finished last in that division last year, meaning that they go up against a lot of last place teams. So they have the Bears, and they get the I believe they get the AFC South as one of their divisions that they play. That's not bad, man. If you're projecting them not to make the playoffs on a schedule that I think in terms of like strength of schedule based on your opponent's winning percentage last year, which is like obviously, can fluctuate a lot. But if you're projecting them to miss, I think you're saying that like you think Watson will be really bad and you think the defense didn't get better. And even if Watson is Brissett, I think with a better defense, man, I still think that team could be challenging. The Steelers are also right there. If you believe in just Steelers anti-curse,
anti-curse is a good way to put it.
But
blessing, they're blessed.
The Steelers blessing. And while I kind of like what they're putting together a little bit, I still have my doubts overall about them, unfortunately. But, the Steelers are always better on paper. The Patriots and the Dolphins are two teams that I think are going to compete to be there. I'm probably not quite as low on the Dolphins as you are, Theo. But they have two of the toughest schedules. Like two of the top three toughest schedules are, I believe, them. And that's the type of thing that's just very, very, very tough to overcome. It's a huge, huge advantage the Browns have on them. So I don't know if everything needs to go perfect for them to even make the playoffs. I don't think their schedule is as hard as it looks. I know it's the Browns, and they are very cursed, but I'm looking at the paper, and it's saying Cleveland sneaks in.
Yeah, I think that's the Browns. When you look at the roster, there's a lot of star power. But someone big is going to miss, whether that be the Browns, whether that be the Chargers. And to me, the argument of like Watson getting off to a slow start and them having a bit too much ground to make up in the AFC North is more plausible than the Chargers regressing after their injury luck was so bad last year. That to me, I like the Chargers argument more than the Browns argument. So I give the Chargers the 7 seed. Browns missed the cut. Steelers missed the cut. Dolphins missed the cut. Patriots missed the cut. I mean, I don't think anybody really has the Titans as like a serious playoff contender or the Broncos.
You never know.
Raiders,
I think they have an easier schedule, and it's the Titans. They're kind of Steelers-esque, scrappy. Yeah.
And then I'm looking. So the matchups for me are Chiefs versus Bills round 1. That would be fun. Bengals versus Chargers round 1. That would be fun. Jets versus Ravens round 1. That would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, I think by the playoffs, I'm just going to make a Super Bowl pick. I'm not going to go through my entire bracket.
We'll say who comes out.
I think we're going to see Bengals and Chiefs again. Mm-hmm. Maybe not. I don't. I'll say the Chiefs make it out. I think the Chiefs make it out. I think that Chris Jones, I think that we're in the middle of a dynasty. I think it ends maybe when Reed retires or Kelsey retires. Like eventually that day is going to come. But as long as those two are still around, I'm not projecting a fall off from Kelsey. I think Chris Jones will be back. I think the defense will be playing well come playoff time. Will it be at the beginning of the year? I don't know. But the rookie wide receivers or the young wide receivers will hopefully be playing like vets by the time the playoffs roll around, kind of like what happened this year. Again, it's just really easy to point to this team and say, I see 5 locks for all, or not even 5, but I see a handful of locks, first team all pro type. I see someone who should win coach of the year basically every year, if not for like voter fatigue or like we just know what's expected of this team with this talent. So like I think I'll say the Chiefs are just, continue to stack Super Bowl appearances and come out of this division or this conference.
The Chiefs project to be better as the season goes on. They've got a lot of, rookies who should improve, and they've got a lot of first or second year guys who should improve. You can pick another team. There are other really good options to win the Super Bowl.
I'm tempted to say it's the Bengals year finally, because it's like their core is so good and Burrow's still on his rookie deal. Like they almost beat the Chiefs last year. Like who knows what happens if Osai doesn't have that penalty at the end. Like they've beat the Chiefs multiple times before. Like I'm tempted to say that it could happen this year, but there's a bunch of teams I'm tempted to say it for.
And
but I wanna give the
there's
Bengals a shout,
there's other
but
teams that you could 100% pick reasonably, but it's like play the odds. The Chiefs are the best team. They have the best quarterback. They are super stacked. I really believe their defense is actually like very good. Which at this point, now that we're multiple years into Patrick Mahomes, being on a serious contract, that's typically not the case. And this is what kept the Patriots so good for so long. It's like typically by this point, it's like the defense starts to fall off. Not when you have Belichick. And whatever the Kansas City Chiefs have done, their defense just is it's not like they're just paying so much on offense that they just can't keep up the defense. Defense is really good. Obviously, they're struggling with Jones, but I believe they're going to pay him. And regardless, it seems like he's going to at least be playing for the back half of the season. So,
when
the Ravens,
he gets traded to the
Jaguars,
Browns, it's going to be a different story. We'll see the Browns in the Super Bowl.
he's a Packer, Blaiden. I fear. They got the cheapest offense in the league. Time to splurge. Give Devontae Wyatt in a first. Let's make it happen.
Oh my
Chiefs.
God.
I do worry about I think what makes their defense good is Chris Jones. I'm imagining who's the Chris Jones equivalent of like 7 years ago, like Von Miller. I don't know. Like someone of that caliber.
I would say their best defensive player is part of the reason why they're good.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't disagree.
Like that's why they need to pay him. It's like, dude, you've got Mahomes with a very good defense, and that very good defense is largely just because you have an absolute game wrecker up front. It's like you can go. It's like just pay those two and Kelsey, and it's like everything else should fall where it may. It's like get those guys on the team, but
yeah.
So hopefully, yeah. I think if he's not out there, I'm not willing to sit here and say this pass rush is anything but like solidly below average. And if their pass rush is solidly below average, then it's not safe to say their defense is going to be very good. So he needs to come back, and that's a situation that is like, but I think it's just going to work out because it just have we ever seen we've seen contract disputes happen late in training camp. Have we seen a guy like Chris Jones get traded off of a dynasty at the peak of his power? Like that just seems less likely to me. So I think it'll get resolved. Like I've said 5 times during this podcast.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be Kansas City. I think again, if Watson's awesome, it could be the Browns. I think the Bengals are right there. But I like their additions in the secondary. But I think it's very young still. And even if Dax Hill is good right away, you can't just rely on him. You also need Nick Scott, who, isn't a superstar by any means. You would need him to be pretty damn good. And you would need Jordan Battle to kind of step up right away as a rookie as well. So I'm not going to bank on that to be those guys to come in and immediately be game wreckers. I think
they need a Cy or Miles Murphy. They need more pass rush too, I think.
Yeah.
Like the Bengals to get over the hump. It would be really, really nice if it wasn't just because DJ Reader's awesome. Like I love DJ Reader, but he's not like this lightning quick pass rush winner, to like get 10 sacks in a season. Like doesn't have that many sacks in his whole career. So when the Bengals rush 4, they need someone outside of Hendrickson. And it's like, whether that be Osai developing or whether that be Murphy, I would rather bet on Osai developing than Murphy, to be completely honest. That's something they need, as long as the safeties to at least be, not disasters while being so young.
That's
and they
fair.
need the line, obviously, to play like they did in the back half of last year, really. And ideally a little bit better because Chris Jones wrecked shop in the playoffs. He destroyed them. So that's what needs to happen.
Baltimore's another team that I think could be right there if they're healthy.
Yeah.
But
that's very true.
If they're healthy.
All the teams we laid out there, they could all be good. If you've got a first team all pro caliber quarterback, you're a pretty good bet. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them, potentially 8, depending on Watson, maybe potentially Rodgers. I shouldn't just list him, but there's a bunch of them in this conference, and they could all take it any given year. So Stay Hot is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy, and I don't even have a script for this one. I'm speaking from the heart. Underdog has so many different game modes to play. You can bet on the MLB, NFL, PGA, NHL, NBA, anything you want, and a lot of different game modes as well. If you have a fantasy league with some friends and your draft is over, but you just can't get enough of drafting a team, you can draft as many teams as you want on Underdog Fantasy. 10-person, 12-person, 4-person, 6-person, it doesn't matter, and any type of money that you want to put into it, you can put into it. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, a lot of different ranges of prizes, and whatever you want to put into it, you can get out of it and whatnot. So it's a really great app. And with Stay Hot, you can use the code Stay Hot on the Underdog Fantasy app and get your first deposit doubled by the app. So if you put in $10, you get $20. That to me sounds like free money. So download the Underdog app, play pick'ems, enter a pool, and do whatever you want. Do whatever works for you. Bet on the NFL, bet on the PGA, bet on the MLB. It's all right there for you. So use promo code Stay Hot on the Underdog app. They'll double your deposit up to $100, I believe. And can't recommend it enough. Before we get into some of the news around the league, I want to ask you one more question about AFC teams. There are 5 teams that we have not mentioned. We have not considered at all for the playoffs. They are the Titans. They are the Broncos, the Raiders, the Texans, and the Colts. If you had to power rank the 5, how would you rank them?
I think I would do Titans 1.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I'd go Broncos 2.
I think
I would as well.
I might go Broncos 1. It's close.
I could see Broncos being with Javonte back and
Yeah.
better Russell Wilson.
Javonte back. I see it. He'll have 2,000 yards, I say. Who else? Who else was that?
Raiders,
Colts,
Texans, Colts.
Raiders. I liked the Colts before Jonathan Taylor was allowed to get traded, which we're going to talk about soon, and then before Shaq Leonard is not 100% yet. So
I'll go Raiders, Colts, Texans.
I have the exact same list as you, Matt. I have Titans, Broncos, Raiders, Colts, Texans.
I think that's right.
Although the Colts defense could suck a lot more than the Texans defense probably could.
It could.
I don't believe either of those teams will quite make the playoffs this year.
I don't believe so either. We haven't talked about them, so I figured we might as well at least say the names.
I don't know. Yeah, it's not like we're not giving them love, but we're talking about them.
I think the Titans and the Broncos could be sneaky, I don't know, dark horses to make it. Raiders do not move me. The Texans and Colts, if Stroud or Richardson make the playoffs in the AFC in their first year, color be shocked. So
it'd be pretty wild.
I think I agree with that analysis.
Anyway,
pretty crazy.
Now that the AFC teams, we've talked about them all, I want to talk about some of the news around the league. And tonight's news segment is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. On top of all the great game modes that you can play on Underdog Fantasy, they also have a news headlines page, so you can get caught up on all the goings on around the league. We are reacting to some of those news segments today, starting with the news that Trey Lance is the 3rd string in San Francisco on a scale of 1 to 100. How over is it?
It's looking probably 85 over.
I would say maybe even 95.
No, it's
over.
not. It is not 90 over. It's 85 over.
It is, I would say 88.3 over. Is
okay, 88.3 over. I can agree with that. Look, it's very rare. Somebody asked me this question on Twitter. I'm sorry, I don't remember your handle, but thank you. Someone said, you're usually against the idea of trading for a former first-round pick still on their rookie deal, even if it's for little draft capital, because those trades never work. And they aren't high upside because they're on such a short contract now with only 1 year left on their deal. Even if you're right, you got to pay them the next year. They're just a free agent. Right. Do you feel that way about Lance? And my answer was no, because Lance has had weird enough circumstances with he's hardly played. He's still very, very young for somebody who got drafted 3 years ago. And he's a quarterback, so he's a little bit higher of an upside because that's the most important position. Plus, he's got a lot of tools. The problem that he faces is not that it necessarily hasn't working out with the 49ers or actually that is most of the problem he faces, I should say. But it's also, he can't get out this year. He can't just go to another team and start. It's like, oh, should he go play for the Buccaneers? In a vacuum, in Madden, that makes sense. In real life, no. They're not thinking about doing that probably. And even if they were, he'd be thrown into the fire. I think there's very much a world where maybe he goes somewhere else and sits for a while. Geno has probably given hope to a lot of guys like this. And again, he is maybe one of the most raw prospects like ever in terms of just games played. Who are drafted that highly. But it's a very tough path that very few have worked out. Alex Smith did it to some extent, but Alex Smith got a lot of games. And no matter where Lance goes, he's just not going to get that many games before the team moves on. Like, even if he does go to a bad team, he's got one season to be better than whatever quarterback they can get at their draft pick is. And I feel bad for him. I don't think he's gotten the greatest shake in the world, but at the same time,
he's also playing badly.
At the same time, he's not playing good. Like, I believe Shanahan to some extent. I think he probably has better insight to it than me. If he goes and sits somewhere for a long time and really starts to click in on a lot of things, I still think he has potential. But there's probably a lot of, quarterback busts that you feel that same way about. So he's got weird circumstances, but it's over. It's over.
Yeah, it's going to be really weird to look back on this 49ers run where they were in the Super Bowl, they were in the AFC champion or the NFC championship game. Like, they've been one of the big contenders of the 2020s so far. And in the middle of that, they drafted one of the biggest draft busts ever. I mean, to give up that much for someone who contributed zilch to your team. I mean, absolutely nothing. I mean, he didn't do shit for them, like, it wasn't like one good season. It wasn't like Baker type of draft. It wasn't even like a Baker type draft bust where you draft him number 1 overall. There was one season where like they made the playoffs and it was all good, and outside of that, it was bad. Like, there was just nothing, and it's not even like they picked him number 1 overall and that was it. They traded up a historic haul to get Trey Lance, so it was really
with other quarterbacks on the board too.
Right,
probably higher on at this point. It's a tough one, man. It's really tough, and I will always maintain that the circumstances were as bad as they could have possibly been for Lance. Nothing short of
situation
Change
matters a lot.
Lance's law instead of Murphy's law.
And I think it motivated the Colts to I think they're doing the right thing where it's like, let's just avoid that situation and just throw Richardson into the fire.
But if Richardson throws, equal picks to touchdowns, who cares? If the Colts win no games this year, awesome. They get a high pick. They want that.
Right.
But Lance just does not get that opportunity, and he was always the type of quarterback who needed it, especially since he was coming from, an FCS school and played 1 year and then lost COVID year and then was still the youngest quarterback, one of the youngest quarterbacks to ever be drafted that high. It's just not good.
He's the most inexperienced football player in the NFL. Right
he barely played in high school. It's really ridiculous.
So it's probably over. He's probably never going to be a good starter, to be completely honest. Again, the way it's not like he looks good and is doing these things. And I thought he looked better before. I think this preseason is honestly a regression from him instead of a progression. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. He needed a lot of, he needed time. He got time, but he didn't get reps and he didn't develop. So I think when it comes to prospects, my philosophy is if you have a legend at quarterback, if you have Aaron Rodgers, if you have Peyton Manning, if you have Tom Brady, and you draft a rookie, obviously you can start the legend and have the rookie develop behind him. If you don't have one of those guys, start the rookie. Don't try it with Mariota. Don't try it with Tyrod Taylor. Don't try it with Jimmy Garoppolo. Just throw them out there instead of settling for something mid. But yeah, it's insane that the 49ers have built all this success while also sinking a ton of resources into a nothing project. And man, I can't help think but how stacked this team would be if they never made the Lance move. I don't blame them for taking the chance. I mean, this offense with a more mobile, aggressive quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo is a really scary thing to think about it. And we even saw it a little bit with Brock Purdy. I think he was able to create some stuff down the field and out of structure that Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't. Like
Right.
Lance could have been better than Brock Purdy in a different universe, perhaps, but yeah, it just didn't work out. And I think that it's like
This is
I've been
proof that the
holding on to Lance
multiverse
hope, but
exists. This is proof that the
it's-
multiverse exists because I
it's
know
very
for a
much
fact,
over in this universe.
know for a fact that Lance is good somewhere, somehow.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah.
mean, he go look at his freshman year at NDSU. It was pretty impressive stuff, and he wasn't perfect, and he didn't throw at the ball a whole lot. But yeah, if he would have played his second year at NDSU, who knows what would have happened? And if he played his rookie year, who knows what would have happened? And if he played the year after that, who knows what would have happened? But not getting any of those years, it was rough. So I know that I've been a Lance defender. I'm hanging up my cape. This one didn't work out. Pushing Lawrence agendas after he sucked his rookie year worked out, but Lance never happened. So I'm declaring it over. I'm declaring my career as a Lance fan over. And
That's fair.
It's tough. It's hard, and I don't like that. I wish he had worked out, man. I'm always rooting for exciting quarterbacks to.
oh yeah,
to win.
especially in
As
the
you
NFC.
should.
I mean, especially in the
Especially in
NFC,
the
he could have been one of the best guys at this point, but didn't happen, and he's not good. So I think they should keep him on the team. I think that a trade doesn't make much sense. Otherwise, he's just going to be a backup somewhere else. I mean, if Purdy gets hurt or isn't the same guy, I think like having 3 shots or like rolls of the dice with Purdy and Darnold and Lance, I'd probably just keep that room
I mean,
intact.
you had
instead of
3
trading him
quarterbacks
away
get
for-
hurt last year.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So I'd probably keep Lance around, honestly, because it's like, what are you getting for him? A 4th round pick, a 5th round pick? No, you're not.
Screw that.
You're not getting-
I mean, the 49ers think a 4th round pick is quite the treat, is how they've been approaching the draft. They believe that's
Yeah, they do
quite
like to
a
pick him.
bountiful haul, but I would probably keep Lance.
I would probably just keep him around as a backup because there's a real chance Darnold would like suck, given Darnold's history. Like,
yeah.
might as well have two potential guys who could get you. Like, they need to win the Super Bowl. They need to. Otherwise, what are they
I've
doing?
been saying this about teams.
How
They
many
just
years?
gotta-
What is
They
gotta
have
the
to win
Super
it.
Bowl.
But it's like,
We're
you
going
don't
on
want a
what
situation
year?
where Josh.
This is year
I'd rather
9
have
of
Lance
them
as my
not-
3rd string and hope he goes on a Linsanity run than Josh Johnson. Although I don't think that Linsanity run is coming. But the other news, Jonathan Taylor, granted to seek a trade. Seems like he's gotten some interest, but just kind of a
From
weird
whom?
situation. They said there's 2 teams that have made an offer.
Hmm.
So I guess my question is, what 2 teams could they be if you had to guess?
So I mentioned the Ravens earlier, right, as a possible, but maybe not, right? That's a little far-fetched. What about the Steelers?
They have Warren and Najee. You
True.
need someone worse than that.
The popular choice seems to be Chicago.
I could very much see Chicago doing that. They spent big on a position that maybe isn't viewed as valuable in Edmonds. If they think they can get another super talented guy, possibly. But I also think that Chicago's approach this year was not bringing back Montgomery, and I really like their running back room. I really like Roshan Johnson and Foreman and Herbert, or Khalil Herbert. Yeah. For some reason, that didn't sound right. So I honestly don't think that they should either, and I'm probably going to look at a lot of teams and be like, oh, I honestly don't think they should.
The Panthers should do it.
Can I just throw a team out there that would make no sense? But the Los Angeles Rams.
Might as well. I think that makes more sense.
They tried to trade like 3 first-round picks for Brian Burns last year. Like, that's not going to help you. They're not good at running back right now. Maybe Sean McVay is scheming something up. Maybe he's throwing down an offer. He threw down one for McCaffrey.
He did throw one down for McCaffrey. It would be a very different McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor are completely
two very different things. Yes,
two teams that come to mind. The first one for me is Carolina. I know that they just paid Miles Sanders. Throw Miles Sanders in the deal. Like the running back behind Jonathan Taylor is Zach Moss. If you're getting rid of Jonathan Taylor, you could use a running back. Throw Miles Sanders in there. Jonathan Taylor reunites with Frank Reich. I saw a lot of this under center, like condensed formation stuff from them. I saw a lot of RPOs from them in these preseason games. That means like probably not a lot of targets for the running back. That's why Miles Sanders is there. Like Miles Sanders hasn't been like a super great receiving back. It doesn't matter. They still pay him because it's like they want pure runners, I think. If there's one that's available.
Yeah, I don't think that's a crazy take. There's a lot of connections there. They obviously value running back. I think with the Sanders signing, it maybe gets a little bit muddy, and it really seems like they really like him.
Right.
And I would not support that unless it was for very
What if
cheap.
it was
which
Sanders
wouldn't
in
be.
a 4th-round pick?
Oh, I'd do it for Sanders in a 4th-round pick all day.
How about Sanders in a 2nd
No,
round
no,
pick?
no, 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 no. I wouldn't do that.
Okay, how about Sanders in a 3rd
I didn't
round
hear what
pick?
you said, to be real with you.
I said Sanders in a 2nd round pick.
The problem is, okay, the real question is how much we'd have to pay him, how much guaranteed money we'd have to give him. We just traded away McCaffrey, you know? So it just feels like, do we value running back? Yes or no? Let's think of something. But Fitterer is he's in on every deal, even though he's been losing most of these deals. But maybe this is one that he'd be in on.
I would say them and the Buccaneers are another team. It's like I watched them in the preseason. It was a ton of under center stuff. It was a ton of power runs between the tackles and play action off of it. Like Rachaad White was not super encouraging his rookie year. Obviously no one really got fired in Tampa, did they? Like the offensive coordinator did, Leftwich, but the GM's still around, head coach is still around. But would they survive a rebuild if they stink this season and they're relying on Baker and Rachaad White, like Baker to throw, Rachaad White to run, or probably a committee behind Rachaad White as well? But if I was them, I'd be like, screw it. This is a winnable division. We saw Jonathan Taylor healthy 2 years ago carry Carson Wentz to a winning record. Like
That's true.
we could get him for a 2nd round pick. Like maybe we could win the division. But
Nick Chubb has carried Baker before.
Yeah, he has carried Baker before, and Jonathan Taylor's a similar type of back. So those are the two teams that immediately stood out to me as like, I don't think any contender would be super interested because you'd have to pay him. But if you were like kind of this borderline wild card team, you know, bad quarterback or young quarterback.
This doesn't make any sense.
I think it does make sense.
The Browns again have the most cap space in the NFL. Dual backfield.
Stop.
That's so phony.
You have a disease. We're gonna cut your head open, and your brain is just gonna be orange with a stripe down the center, dude.
No, let's.
There's no reason.
What was the cap number looking like next year?
Negative.
Year? Remember? No, let me. I'm on the website. Let me look at the website here for one moment. 2024 update. Right, they have negative $85 million in cap space. If they get, let's pay a second running back, I think. And cap space is fake. We'll just restructure everybody.
Are we making him a tight end or what? Making if Watson doesn't work out, they'll just have Taylor and Chubb out there and run the option.
This wildcat offense will kick ass, dude.
It will. We're trading for both Jonathan Taylor and Chris Jones.
He'll fill the Kareem Hunt role. Anyway, that's all the news I really want to talk about. We've already talked about the Chris Jones holdout enough today, and stances. Like I don't know how. I don't know.
I would pay the good player. I would
pay
believe,
him.
Me
and
personally,
I have to believe that it works out. That's my take on that news. So, anything else?
As I went up to go record this podcast, the Reds were down 3-0. The second I step up, Ellie De La Cruz hits a home run triple. They're up 4-3.
They're also blessed. Not a cursed franchise at all.
They're sweet. Then we stop down the podcast for a second. I go to get some water. I come back, and the second I do, Ellie hits a triple. What? That's awesome. I think that's all I have to say about it.
We should record the podcast more during Reds games.
They've got another one tonight, so
we'll record another podcast.
Yeah.
Part 2
next week's in advance.
But shout out to Ellie. That's my guy.
Shout out.
65 and 61. They're playing the Angels, who are 61 and 65. That's
palindrome.
They're up by 4 at the bottom of the 7th. It's looking good. Are the Reds going to make the
probably
65 and
not.
61 is not that bad, is it?
Yeah, only 12 teams get into the playoffs, I believe, in the MLB. I'm very, very casual for everybody listening. I just pretty much follow the Reds and nobody else. I think they're a couple games out of the wild card. It's possible, but they're also like very ahead of expectations. Like way. Like
Ahead
they
of
called up
schedule.
all their young guys. They've been really good. They went on a huge win streak. Yeah, they're half a game out of the wild
Oh, they're
card.
behind my Brewers.
Oh, stop.
in the
Oh,
NFC.
Where are the Twins right now?
Oh, man.
The last I heard, the Twins were leading just an absolutely terrible division.
This is
And-
unfortunate.
That appears to still be the case. You know who else is in their division? You know who's second, Blaiden?
You know
Speak.
any other teams, Blaiden?
I know he knows one, which is the answer I'm looking for.
Is it the Guardians?
Yes, sir. But the Guardians.
Oh yeah,
are
that's
not
right. Because people said that like, how can I wear a Twins shirt when you're a Cleveland fan?
Yeah, they're in the same. They're in the same division. They're competing.
I did not know that. I just got it was a free shirt that I got at outside the Twin Stadium. There was like a Chevy stand, and they're like, "Hey, do you want this free shirt?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
You're kind of like a sneaky Minnesota fan.
Am
You
I?
got the Twins shirt. You have
I've got the Laquan Treadwell jersey.
This guy loves Minnesota.
I guess I do. I guess I should move to Minnesota.
I guess you should.
You should.
I should.
But
Here's
yes, I have
here's
the
a real
luxury
question.
of being I can be a Brewers, a Twins, or a Diamondbacks fan,
you gotta
depending.
pick
And now
one,
I can
man.
be a Rockies fan too.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, go for that,
depending
man.
on
Yeah, you're a
who-
Rockies fan, dude.
Where is Brendan Rodgers
they
still
suck.
hurt?
I don't know. They're 48 and 77 though.
So
So,
probably.
They're not
But
very
anyway, I'm a Brewers fan now because they're the best
Okay.
of the four.
so true.
Fuck the Reds.
Here's a question:
Brewers.
should I get every Laquan Treadwell jersey, just like all of them, like his
Yes.
college jersey at Ole
That's
Miss?
a great idea.
He's like 5 NFL jerseys, and then if I can
High
find his
school
high
Laquan
school
Treadwell
jersey,
will move mountains.
That's a good idea. That could be your flag football uniforms.
Laquan Treadwell,
That would be good.
that would be
That would be
hilarious. But
Anyway,
I don't have anything else. Next week, next Thursday, when next Thursday's episode comes out, we'll do the NFC for those that are listening, because we said at the top we were going to do the NFL playoffs. We only got through the AFC. We're going to do the NFC. We're going to do the NFC
because I need
next.
time to decide what to do with because I'm trying to fit the Packers in there, and I couldn't quite figure it out. But now I get some days to prepare. How's it
Theo,
gonna?
no.
How can this happen?
Stop.
Jordan loves him though, dude.
Bro said I have a
watch-
disease.
Go watch the QB school breakdown on Jordan Love against the Patriots, and let the
He does good
greatness
stuff.
watch over you.
Hey.
Anyway,
Until
end
next
it.
time. Yeah, until next time, we'll discuss preseason. There's this gnat that's been flying around my room the whole podcast.
let's
Been
end it.
driving me
Let's end
nuts.
it. No more gnats.
No. We'll be back to talk about preseason. We'll be back to do the NFC. But until then, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the flippity flop.